Good morning, everyone. Dr. Brent Davis, and I put up the first screen, gives a little bit of my background. The title of our presentation today is When Hemp CBD Extracts Become Bioactive Miracles, New Clinical Findings. So I started holistic practice in 1978 as a holistic chiropractor. I had 2 years postgraduate training in homeopathy, pretty strong background in anthroposophical medicine, and a very strong interest in herbal medicine. So I kind of started practice as an eclectic holistic physician tending toward naturopathy, but my license is actually a chiropractor. So, but not in the normal sense, because I was always looking for core causes. If somebody's spine went out, why did it go out? You know, unless they got clobbered with a baseball bat. Why would the spine keep going out? Always the question, why? Always trying to find core causes. So as I look at hemp, which has this profound activity, I've taken that same approach. Started an herbal manufacturing company in 1981. That business is still in existence today, but now we have an organic herb farm in central Tennessee and a manufacturing plant about 3 miles away. And that is very significant because it allows us to be only one of a handful of companies that can make fresh plant herbal extracts. By harvest the herb, and in less than an hour it can actually be under extraction in the lab. So that's kind of cool. That same facility is now producing the Heaven Sent Hemp products. So in 2017, it came to my attention that, you know, everything was pointing towards CBD. Many of my new patients coming in were taking CBD products. So the way I began to look at this is the way I look at everything. I get a whole bunch of products and I start evaluating them on patients. So I bought about 12 products and started evaluating them on patients, and that started giving me a lot of information. What we're going to point toward today, and what we're going to try and help you understand, is how to really look at hemp CBD products in a different way. They're getting to be like the generic bad quality vitamin C. They're just everywhere in the marketplace, and that is, in my opinion, kind of a disaster, because what we have with properly prepared hemp products is something nothing short of miraculous if you understand how that substance works. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And my major thesis after working for 2 years with this is that when we see things like chronic subluxation, people's back or neck or shoulders keep hurting, keep having neck pain, as I started seeing this with dozens of patients and going in deeper, and I'll show you why I came to this conclusion, I think that what's actually going on is getting somatosomatic reflexes between the spinal cord and the small muscles of the spine, and a lot of muscles all over the body. And I think we're getting reflex activity from a deteriorating spinal cord, brainstem, and brain. That's what my thesis is, that's what's going on. It's going on in the population. And by applying the proper kinds of hemp extracts, we see an interruption of the signaling that demonstrates that kind of a problem. So I'll be getting into that. Let's look at this, if this will load here quickly.
If you haven't heard of CBD cannabidiol, you probably will soon. It is one of many natural healing chemicals found in 2 different types of the extraordinary hemp plant. Industrial hemp is produced for food, fiber, and naturally occurring healing chemicals such as CBD cannabidiol. It contains only trace levels of THC and is non-psychoactive. Increasing advocacy will ensure free availability for all. Medical marijuana contains much higher levels of THC that have psychoactive properties. It is often used to treat serious late-stage illness. It is a controlled substance that requires prescription. When high-grade medicinal strains of industrial hemp are extracted properly, they offer a huge range of naturally occurring compounds that possess anti-inflammatory, immune-enhancing, bone-regulating, and most of all, anti-stress properties, all in one plant. Holistic medical clinical evaluation shows that olive oil extracted industrial hemp directs the body into the parasympathetic healing mode.
So that little introduction talks about something that is huge. When we talk about hemp CBD, gee, is it to get rid of Parkinsonian tremors, or is it to get rid of all the late stage illness, the terrible problems of uncontrolled childhood epilepsy? That's what's giving CBD and cannabidiol the headlines, but we're really missing the boat. We want to try and use this amazing substance before these late stage symptoms develop. So one of the things that and I say properly extracted, and I'll explain more about what that means. The way that the hemp is extracted is profoundly important, and here's how I came to discover that. So I got approximately 12 brand leading hemp products that were extracted by different means. They're extracted by supercritical CO2 extraction. That's probably over 90% of the marketplace, because almost every label that you see is white labeled. They're not making the product. They have it made in some huge facility that's just gathering plant material from all over the country or the world and extracting it, putting out a thick paste, that kind of orangish brown paste. That paste is then diluted in olive oil or generally medium chain triglycerides, which is not a good substance to use. And some of the companies are making ethanol extractions because those oil-soluble components of the cannabis plant will dissolve in alcohol, and some are making isopropyl alcohol. And all of those different products are, acceptable, and they're all being made with care. Then you have the hexane and the other toxic solvents, which were coming out of other parts of China, Eastern Europe, and so on. Very, very inadvisable to use that. It really, really kills the substance. So if you get any of those three, the CO2, ethanol, or the isopropyl, they could be a major brand that's reputable. Now, here's what's very interesting. If someone is so deficient in their endocannabinoid system, which controls so many things, and it's available it's all over the skin, it's distributed in the brain, various parts of the central nervous system, and it's in the digestive and enteric system as well. And there are different receptors between the skin and some of the other areas. But the endocannabinoid system is enormously important for total body regulation. So if someone is totally out of balance and is desperately drained of Jing and the core essence of their kidney energy, and their bones have been stripped of, Chinese medicine have been stripped of their residual store of our natal qi, and this is unfortunately the condition that we're finding people in, even if they're not old, then almost any CBD product will work if it's reasonable and really an actual CBD product. But once it's had an initial activity, and this is what I began finding with patients, a lot of those products across the board stop working very significantly. And that is where, when I started coming in with this unusual olive oil extract that was created in a bizarre form of serendipity, this has always happened in my life the last 35, 40 years. When I work with plants, I get a lot of guidance and I discover things. So we found a different way that's trade secret, it's unique in the industry. It's a different way of extracting the hemp that seems to render it biologically active in a most unusual way. So when I took all these products and I used them over time, basically I found one thing that really alerted me to this, and that is and I just had this idea to do this because I have a long training in applied kinesiology, now properly called professional applied kinesiology, PAK, to try and distinguish it from the folks that have gone out for a weekend and learned a little muscle testing and then are online or in some other way representing themselves as experts in muscle testing. That's a real shame, because muscle testing, when properly done, is a tremendous diagnostic skill, but it requires a lot of study, at least a 100-hour basic course, 100 hours given over several months. And most of the doctors in that organization have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of experience doing a muscle test, which is a very valid neuromuscular test. So these are some cute little short videos that I shot in my office. And let me just show this to you. This is giving the background of, we want to go ahead a little bit here. It's giving the background of applied kinesiology and explaining the significance Okay, so then it'll go ahead to my office where I'm examining a patient.
Okay, I'm here with Jenny and I'm looking at another application for the transdermal CBD that I've been developing, and it's incredibly broad acting. What I have found is something that does not appear in any literature that I have seen, and that is how the transdermal applications can affect the musculoskeletal system that we can measure. So if we use standard muscle testing, first developed by Kendall and Kendall Physical Therapy.
So here, and hopefully you can hear me as I speak over this, I've stopped the video, but I'm doing a standard muscle test, and we're going to find a weakness. Now, a normal chiropractor might simply adjust what's called a fixation. It's a particular thing that is in the mid-thoracic spine that's a locking of the vertebrae that ends up producing pain in the back. That's this young lady who's a performing artist was having back pain. So when this set of muscles is weak, the typical resolution of that is to make an adjustment. But I very often don't do that. I go deeper in saying, why is the area disturbed? So we're going to see what happens when we do the test. There's a complete weakness.
And then developed much more of Dr. Goodhart, chiropractor. In applied kinesiology, hold this here, keep your arm in that position. Don't let me push. And so, okay. And so her muscle tone is really good, but in this particular area, keep this here. Push hard. Okay, yeah, it's just not strong. So normally, as a chiropractor, we would look at the structural things involved here in the thoracic vertebrae, and we would figure out an adjustment and a number of different ways of correcting that. But it's a neuromuscular weakness. It's probably neurological. She didn't have any injuries to the rhomboid muscles, so it's not structural. It's some sort of a functional disorder that's making them not work right. So that results in tightness in this area, right, Jenny? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I asked her, and she's in good shape. I said, what's the one thing in your body that seems to be maybe not right? And so this is what I've been doing as I look at this CBD for transdermal use. This is what I've been doing. I've just been saying to people, what the heck doesn't seem right? Is it okay if a little oil gets on here? It's not a problem. Okay. So I'm just going to first, let's just see what I've been doing.
Yeah, and so what's interesting here is the tendency would be to go to the region and apply something. But what's really fascinating with CBD and the cannabidiol and the terpenes and all the compounds that are actually the full complement, when you do a whole plant extract, you want that over 500 compounds, you want those all to be there. The huge thing that they do is something called cell signaling. They turn on the nervous system. So I knew that from the product literature. I wrote a 61-page white paper, which is available for download at heavenscenthemp.com. And I thought cell signaling, okay, well, I'll put it on the brainstem and let's see what happens.
I'm going to put it suboccipitally and here. The transdermal CBD, which I'm really careful to say is hand extracted with this magnificent, simple process, very high quality material extracted with a beautiful organic olive oil. And it passes through the skin. It doesn't need carriers. It doesn't need liposomal delivery systems. It doesn't need anything. The plant has it itself. And you actually, in my opinion, don't want to interfere with that natural thing at all. So we put it into this area, and I want to see what's going to happen neurologically to an area down the spine. And I don't know. I don't know if anything will happen, but let's just go ahead. Okay, make fists. Raise this up. This way, hold it in that position. Don't let me push down. Okay, so what happened to the muscles? Isn't it?
How is that possible?
Yeah, how is that possible? Okay, hold this here. Let's try it again. Pull hard. That's your normal muscle strength. Okay, so what the heck just happened, right? Yeah. So
I couldn't move my arms, or
you couldn't hold them.
yeah, I couldn't hold them at all. And then as soon as you put that on, they held strong.
Yeah, I mean they're really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Okay, so like I've been watching that. I've been watching it with the neck, putting it on, influencing low back muscles. Go ahead and lie back. Let's just see the other areas that I like to put it on. Like these areas here.
So that's, showing cell signaling from going into the suboccipital area, brainstem and spine. And then we're going to talk more later about how it could even do that. Physiologically, it has to be a bioenergetic response as well. In molecular medicine, nothing could have worked that fast. So that brings up a whole nother issue here. But what we're going to go in and look at here, because this lady was under a lot of performance stress, is this thing, so-called adrenal support. Okay, and so what adrenal support is the largest area of nutritional therapy in the United States, pretty much. There's more effort put into trying to so-called support adrenals, but really, in many cases, that's a misnomer, because what's really accurately going on is the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems are really out of balance, and we're being driven to be sympathetic dominant when we are in this push race environment. And so the massive thing that hemp does is, as you saw from that little movie, it brings us into the parasympathetic healing mode. So two things that it does, these are my two findings that I want to share. They're not being discussed. It's not being discussed by physicians. They're talking about all these other things for treating late stage illness. Prevention is enormous here. Protect the nervous system. That's the reason drug companies got patents on CBD, is because it's clearly neuroprotective. What we're using and what we advise everyone to use is whole plant hemp extracts. They're not trespassing into the patent protected area of CBD. So what we're offering is cannabidiol, and now the term is called phytocannabinoid rich, PCR rich, phytocannabinoid rich extracts, which means all the natural cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids, which no one is measuring, but they're there as well. So when you put all those things in, you see the removal of stress. And just to save time on this, we were testing a stress response on her. And
still active here.
So,
and you're performing, you're going to be out with some pretty heavy stress schedules post-home. And if we touch that into this GB20 post-home, so this is an endocrine.
So that's what's called two-pointing. Means that her system was well enough adapted that it did not show just the basic challenge of the adrenals, but when we went into one of the endocrine master points, then it came up. So it showed as a weakness.
Balance, or this point in acupuncture is really important. And if we touch that, it's called two-pointing, and it weakens you. But if you just stay here, it doesn't pull strong. Okay, good. And so now we're just going to put the let's see, there it is. We're just going to put this here. And this would be where you would apply it. Okay.
And we're actually using it then in applied kinesiology, the adrenal and kidney, both as well. The neurolymphatics are 1 inch apart, but above the umbilicus and around it, that's where you would put it to try to help support the sympathetic, parasympathetic balance and take the load off the adrenals.
Dual points up here that influence kidney adrenal energy.
And again, I'll repeat this. What I was doing, the same thing that I'm doing now, I was doing that with other products that were extracted with CO2. I'll have to repeat this 2 or 3 times so this is not lost. I did it with the products that were CO2 extracted, the majority of products in the marketplace. I did it with alcohol extracted. I did it with isopropyl extracted. And in general, they do not remove these reflexes the way the olive oil proprietary extract process. It's just something that I found, and I'm telling doctors to absolutely be sure and prove it. Get your patients, or if you're a consumer watching this, have your doctor have someone test it. If you're using a product and it does not remove these reflexes, it's because it's extracted wrong. And no one in the industry is looking at that for obvious reasons, because everybody's happy just buying the product from the white label companies that are producing this stuff by the kilogram. It used to be $10,000 a kilogram, and now it's down to about $2,500 or $2,000 per kilo of this paste, concentrated CBD paste.
And to just build, sort of achieve the great bringer of his thesis, the balancer, and it's like I call it the great communicator.
Then I'm putting it on
these are other points
Conception CB27.
Set of points that really have to do with regulating the system. And just that. So here and here and around here is a good area. And so then we're going to go back to the adrenal standard. These are just reflex areas over that. And then you pull solid, which is strong like it was. And then when we go up here, pull solid. Go ahead. Stop. There's no weak.
Yeah.
So we did something. So that's the, we're going to do these lab tests. I told you about, we're going to do all that stuff. We're going to check. But the point is, it really affects the nervous system. It changes neuromuscular reflexes. This is a lovely, beautiful, healthy young woman. But what this stuff can be is for just about everyone to stay healthy.
All right, so that's preventively. We should be doing this to support the adrenals, to push ourselves into the parasympathetic healing mode. If the cannabidiol, or let's call them phytocannabinoid-rich products that you're using are not removing neuromuscular weaknesses, I'm going to show a couple different ways. You can also test the little flexor digitory mini here. For lack of a better term, it's often called the O-ring test, that is used by a lot of acupuncturists. But that little muscle will often be weak. If the extracts, the CBD products that you're using do not abolish that, it means that they're not doing cell signaling that's activating the nervous system. So it's a quick test to check the activity of your product. This is another example of, this was, these two cases that I'm showing were early on. They were when I was first evaluating all the commercial products against the extract that I had come up with that was made by only an olive oil extract, without any temperature manipulation, without any phase changes from freezing to all the different technological things that are going on with our very delicate hemp plant. Those phase changes, as far as I can tell, are changing the subtle bioenergetics, which is directly linked to cell signaling, which is this extremely complex process, unbelievably complex process. And we've got about a half an hour more because I want to try and get into some of that. This is areas that no one's looking at with relationship to hemp, and it's very important that health professionals and consumers be apprised of this.
Coming in for various things. I did something that's a particular kind of an injury recall that was a physical correction. It took out a dural challenge test where when we did this, let me have this arm up, keep your elbow straight, pull strong. Okay, and when we just did a general flexion, pull strong, she just couldn't do that at all. She completely.
The reason I mention that is this lady had structural complaints, and I did structural corrections to remove twisting and torsion in her spinal system. And so
when we did that traction, which is a nice general dual torque, dual tension screening, and that was not a structural correction, that was a brain memory correction, and it got rid of the dural testing. But she, in this injury that she had, and she still gets a spot at L3 down there, and so I thought, well, let's check the quadratus lumborum. So hold on the table, we're going to turn this way, and then don't let me pull. Be strong. Okay, and there's just not anything there. And I have no idea. I'm going to do one thing to see if it'll correct it. Okay, pull solid. Nothing there. Okay, so we've got the new CBD, actually, let's do it 2 different ways. Let's do it, first of all, with this. If you will please sit up. And I'm going to do what I've been doing. I'm going to put it at the iliac crest and the sacrum. I'm just going to put it, now, of course, the area that she was talking about was there, but this stuff seems to be the grand communicator. This product is under development. I don't have the label yet for it, but it's coming very soon. And I'm going to go right in there. It really, you can put it almost anywhere because it seems to get into the system so quickly. All right, that's there. Now let's go up to here because I've been normally putting it on the cervical spine. Okay. All right, let's go. And we can do this orally as well. And so we'll go here, pull down the side of the table. Okay, now don't let me pull. Jesus.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Pull hard.
That is so different.
That is ridiculous. Because the quadratus lumborum is a strong muscle, except on you it wasn't. Okay, it's just like complete.
Are you doing that? You're doing the same.
Oh no, I'm actually pulling it quite a lot harder. Okay, let's try to get full.
But there's no way.
So,
That's amazing.
if
That's ridiculous.
it stays that way, you have a whole different change
Wow.
in what's going on structurally.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, me neither. Because I've never done that before.
So this was in the early stages of development. The product has been out now about 2 years, but that's what went on. That's how I've always developed products. Actually watch what they do physiologically. So we don't have to go off of pharmaceutical data that's been used to produce drugs. We don't have to go off of animal experiments. Worst of all is just badly conducted or dishonestly conducted research. My comment has always been to your health provider, test the stuff yourself, because you should be able to. Patients can actually do some of these simple little tests themselves. I've had a little 6.5-year-old girl recently come back to me and told me she now can test stuff like that on her dad and her mom. She was real pleased about that. So it's possible. And so repeating it again, I did that with the other products that are extracted 3 different ways. In general, I don't know exactly the percentage, maybe 5% of the time they would work the same way, certainly not more than 10% of the time, but very rarely did they produce that consistent result. Okay, so it's a huge finding. And then look at this. This is a whole different thing. So I realized that the cannabidiol, the CBD, and there are many kinds of cannabidiol. There's about 50 or 60, many different varieties of that. And then you have all the terpenoids. Everybody says terpenes. Terpenes are in the fresh plant. When it dries, it becomes a terpenoid, which is an essential oil component. Those are incredibly important. And a lot of people in the hemp research recognize the importance of terpenes. I'm talking about it more and more. It's not just CBD. And then the part that's certainly there, but because analytic labs here are not running flavonoid tests, nobody's talking about flavonoids, but the flavonoids are important as well. And they're a part of polyphenols, are a part of the hemp plant. So I got the idea of and my business partner who had been in the fresh micro green production business, we thought, why don't we take the young plant, before it reaches the maturation where it starts building up CBD with a little bit of THC. So we'll get it at that stage, and then we'll do something interesting with that fresh plant component. So we did that. We took that material, it's a food product, basically, and I started testing that on patients. So it has no THC, very trace amounts of CBD, and we call them, it's a hemp terpene, colloidal hemp terpenes. So this is what I found about that wonderful substance, and that's a whole cannabis plant. In the literature, you see that there's definitely things in that plant that influence bone function, probably the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts, bone remodeling. It suggests that in the literature.
Pull strong, up toward the ceiling, pull hard. Okay. Okay, pull up toward the ceiling, pull hard.
So this is a test, a reflex test that was developed, I think, first by Gersendahl. That's where I saw it, I'm pretty sure. It was a long, long time ago. So I kind of pulled that out of the mothballs of my mind, and I thought, let's try and check these 3 different positions of the extended arms, and with percussion.
Then found pull hard. And these were all different facets of checking for osteoporosis, osteopenia, compression of the disc. And what we found before.
Hers, her tests, Melody's tests are all fine, but she's standing
there. When we did this, we do it now, and you're repeating this. They did not give anything. I'm checking to see what the colloidal hemp terpenes can do for this. Raise yourself up and drop on your heels hard, like we did that before. Drop hard one. Okay, let's do 2 more times. Okay, and 1 more time. Okay, now thumbs up toward the ceiling. Pull up toward the ceiling hard. Strong. There, pull strong. And then thumb straight toward the floor. Keep that up and pull strong. Kaboom. It weakens. Right?
So I'm going to move through this, but so what we just is that percussion test, and I believe that last one is potentially for disc, but we're checking ligamentous tone, we're checking compression to the bones there, we're checking joint facets. There's a lot of things that happen when you put a hard impact into the spine like that. Let's see when we can get past this. All right.
Okay, so we're going to do a full drop, but we have to shape it. This is the colloidal hemp terpenes plus, and I'm going to do a full drop. How's that? It's not too bad. Yeah. Pretty good. All right, so let's do that same thing again. Raise up and drop down hard on the heels. Okay, again. 1 more time. Okay, then turn thumbs down, hold it there, and pull up toward the ceiling. Pull hard.
So I have a funny little story. And we've all run into this. There are the people that are the naysayers, and they look at you and they go, well, oh, you're just not pushing hard. So then they look at you and they go, and I remember these patients all come into my office and take hard-earned cash and pay. They're all pretty intelligent people. People don't pay for things that don't work. The patients know it's not fraudulent, but you're looking at people, they're going, oh, you're just not pushing as hard. I said, okay, so let me just tell you, let's take a little exercise. Go into your general physician's office, and when he pulls out his stethoscope to listen to your lung sounds and says, you know what, you've got pneumonia, how likely would it be to say to your doctor, oh, you're just making that up? Or if you listen to your heart and he says, you know, I hear a heart murmur, we need to have an EKG, or we need to have some electrocardiography here to look at this. You go, oh, you're just making that up. Stethoscope is subjective, but it's a very useful tool if you're trained. Muscle testing is a very useful tool if you're trained to do it, and anybody, unless they're unethical. So those kinds of guys are basically saying, oh, your whole practice is fraudulent. Well, as more and more holistic practitioners do good work, that argument will go away. But muscle testing is an extraordinary way of getting insight into potential action of something. And that's why I put this out as this is all research, and for colleagues to try to repeat this and corroborate it, and for patients to be aware of it. That's very, very important to understand that.
So that's kind of what I thought. What we're doing is compressing the spine and all the
Let's see if we can
joints. And if there is weakness in the bone, we were stressing that as too. So it just generally supports.
Stop that there and come back here. All right. So what this told me when I saw this kind of remarkable and often distant and remote, putting it on the low back and that sacral outflow, lumbosacral outflow, and seeing it affect things in the upper extremities, putting it in the brainstem and spinal area and seeing it affect things, peroneus, tertius brevis, the muscles that prevent the foot from turning in. They protect our foot and keep it so we don't sprain our ankle. That's an easy muscle to grab hold of and test it. And you can find so many of these muscles will be facilitated when they are being inhibited. There's something turning off their strength. There's nothing wrong with the muscle. Something is turning off its strength. It's one of the core findings of applied kinesiology. Muscles appear to be weak when there's actually nothing wrong with the muscle itself. There may be, there could be damage to the spindle cells, or at the origin insertion, there can be tears, and those are fixed. But when the muscle is intact, there's so many things that can turn it off. And by understanding what can turn it off and watching what turns it back on, it gives us a lot of insight. So, the straight findings that are, what makes cannabinoids and cannabis have such activity. I'm going to give a real quick oversight to that, the overview. The phytocannabinoids, mostly CBD and THC, are always talking about how they interact with CB1 and CB2 receptors. If you look at the various sites that are educating, they all have these beautiful, elaborate pictures with where the little CB1 and CB2 receptors are found. Well, that's only part of, those are called G protein coupled receptors. And that's part of it, but there's all these other things that phytocannabinoids interact with. They interact with these 4 other types of, for sure, they interact with what are called PPARs, which are nuclear hormone receptors that control the transcription of target genes. So transcription of target genes, that's absolutely huge. There are a number of studies I've seen that show definitely that phytocannabinoids interact with that. These other ones that you see, I'm using the word probable because there's published literature that shows that it's likely that they're influencing these receptors, but I don't think there's proven yet, but in my mind they probably do. So there's all these other things that phytocannabinoids do to turn on bi-cell signaling, to turn on things, but especially turning on stuff inside the nucleus, and by changing transcription of the genes. That's huge. The other one's NFKB. I didn't know this stuff. I mean, I'm not a cell biologist, so I just had to look this stuff up, but these are things that appear in the literature. Look at each one of these TRP channels or membrane proteins that modulate ion entry, and they influence neural signaling processes. They're involved in many, many things. So that's why when you look at the 500 plus compounds in cannabis, it is staggering to find them all in one plant. So if anybody has just said, oh, well, CBD products, please think again and get different CBD products and start looking at them much more critically and look right away to see if they're extracted with CO2, because it produces a different energetic. So the last thing, well, second thing that people are starting to talk about is terpenes and terpenoids, yes, and those, the hallmark of terpenes, with one of the greatest, it was a text written in the early 2000s by Norwegian researchers, a whole huge text just on terpenes. And this text, is what I put here is excerpted exactly from that text, that terpenoid and other isopenoids have important functions as messengers within organisms, within organs, and within the cell body, in particularly between the cell surface and the cell nucleus. They can influence cell stage and mitosis, resulting in changes in morphology and differentiation. Terpenoid end products can interfere with gene expression or more directly act as key enzyme regulators. Again, interrupt and act on and change and influence gene expression. So we have in this one plant a phenomenal addition to nutrigenomics. It really needs to be looked at. But you will not see all of those changes depending on how you extract the material. This is the critical thing that won't come up because apparently too many companies are already using that. So there's a lot of issues that are going to pop out with the CBD products. I don't know where the FDA is going to go. I think they're in a real dilemma because they've got the drug companies behind them, and they're pretty much officially part of the drug enterprise, drug industry, and they have got to protect these extremely expensive patents. Have finally been granted after all these years, and the patents have been granted on CBD extracted with supercritical CO2 extraction. And so you've got dozens of companies selling CBD products. I suspect they're going to need to change, and that's why, as I developed these products, we were very clear that they are whole plant extracts. They contain CBD naturally, but they're not CBD extracts. So we don't want to overstep the patented products which are on the market. So I'm not sure what will happen there for the companies selling all the stuff with CBD in it. And the polyphenols are flavonoids, and that's what's in there. And everybody that does medicinal plant chemistry and therapy knows that flavonoids are very important for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. So now we get to a little bit more unusual stage, and I'll try and wrap this up. And hopefully, if people can go back and refer to this. This magnificent thing, let me see if it comes up on here. This is so beautiful. I'm not going to take the time. It's 28 pages. It's called The Light Encoded DNA Filament and Biomolecular Quantum Communication by the smartest young man that I ever met. I met him when he was working on his PhD thesis in University of Hawaii, Manoa. He then went on, he's now working on Kauai, but this man is an absolutely brilliant quantum biologist, and he explains the stuff that we need to understand that influences cell signaling. So please go in and look at that beautiful method of understanding how microtubules, which are in the nucleus, but also that type of structure runs throughout the whole body. They're like fiber optic connectors that can take signals throughout the body, basically at the speed of light. And that has to do very, very much, I think, with cell signaling. That's how we can have responses that are way too fast for molecular biology. That they're just instantaneous. In fact, if you work around people, and I do, that are highly sensitive people that have an extrasensory ability to perceive energy, sometimes when you just touch the skin, they immediately sense this huge change in a person's body. It's basically nearly instantaneous. So that a magnificent work, The Light Encoded DNA Filament, 28 pages long. Make sure that you read it. Another brilliant way to understand formative forces is from the work of Rudolf Steiner's great student, Ehrenfried Pfeiffer, who is the father of biodynamic agriculture. And he came up with something called sensitive crystallization. You can take copper sulfate, at I think it's a 5% solution, put it in a very special kind of dish in a vibration-proof and a moisture-controlled environment, very special kind of environment. And in about 18 hours, there'll be a crystalline form that will show this pattern. It's a very harmonic pattern. You can then add samples of human blood to it. You can add plant sap. He originally did this with plants to get a sense of which plants were more healthy or more vibrant than others. You can actually do it with medicines to see how they express themselves in what's called formative forces. This is the etheric stuff of quantum biology. This is what regular biologists and our mainstream science is not set up to measure. But it's very important. Just because you can't measure it easily doesn't mean it doesn't exist. This has to do primarily and fundamentally with self-signaling. So this one shows the normal. This shows these what are called transverse patterns that are, he calls it a muddle formation. But if you look under sensitive crystallization, just do a Google search. And if it's still going to stay on there, very interesting articles come up from India, which are showing that they're using this method as an extremely accurate pre-screening test for oral cancer. It's being used in India. It can be done in a day. It's inexpensive, and it has anywhere between about 84 to almost 100% accuracy when compared with the normal biopsy techniques that would confirm it microscopically and so on. So we have to pay attention to the energy of a product. The energy of the product is influenced by how it is extracted, how it's handled, and believe it or not, by the intention of the makers. That was the great secret of the shamans that I've had the honor to spend so much time with over the last 40 years. They knew that was important in the medicine. The maker also, their intention has a lot to do with its action. So let's see if we can go back to any questions that may be here. And unfortunately, we had internet down. So I think we'll see if we end up having to do this over, if it actually recorded and was on there. So thank you all for anyone that sees this. Hopefully it will provide some new thought for our great product that comes from the hemp, the cannabis variety that is low in THC but high in CBD. Thanks very much.